Welcome to GearCheckGames. This is part 2 of our commentary for Metroid Prime. Last time we started off the adventure on the frigate Orpheon, where Samus investigated a distress signal from the space pirates, only to discover that they had kind of been screwed over by their own experiments. And we met up with Ridley, who fled to the planet below, so we're gonna chase after him. That's basically the story of this game until we get to the very end.
Yeah, one thing that we didn't talk about in the previous episode, but we
most of what was happening on screen.
Well, yeah, and slightly alluded to. So, Metroid Prime, right, is the first Metroid game that came out in a very long time, since Super Metroid, and this is basically trying to replicate the feel of Super Metroid, but in a 3D environment, and this opening sequence here, where you kind of like really get to sink your teeth into the game. If the frigate was the tutorial, this is the start. It's very evocative of the opening sequence of Super.
Yeah, to very closely paraphrase Geek Critique, this is when Metroid Prime like truly becomes a Metroid game.
Yeah.
Because prior to this, they were basically just trying to like get their hooks in you with this kind of linear, more cinematic section where you're going through the frigate and kind of like piecing the story of what happened there together for yourself based on the little environmental clues
and logs.
But like the level design is like funneling you directly forward. Whereas here, the first room you encounter on the Tallon IV world has like 4 different exits. And thankfully, from experience, I know which one to go through.
Tallon IV?
What's that?
Get it? Because it's Tallon IV?
4 exits.
So before we go into the meat and potatoes of the quest here, I'm just trying to get a few enemies scanned. Being that it was the first 3D Metroid game in the series, Prime did add a lot of features that weren't previously in Super Metroid. And one of the more divisive ones seems to be the scanning element, as it kind of slows down the pace of the game if you're playing it for the first time and you're not sure what's critical and what's optional.
Yeah. Well, and especially coming from the 2D games, which are, even with their sense of exploration, are a little bit faster paced, and there's not necessarily a lot of just curious, kind of cat-like exploration, where you just kind of, Well, yeah, because, whenever, if you've ever seen a cat going around a new environment, it's slow, it's cautious, it'll just take time to kind of look at certain things.
It has a red helmet on with a gun on its hand.
Yeah, in the 2D games, I always charged headlong into the next areas, clear room, next door, clear room, next door, where in Prime, you kind of clear the room, and then you start, turning over different rocks, scanning. While, Metroid Prime definitely, makes a really good play for a feel of Super Metroid, it definitely also has its own flavor of this little bit more, it leans even more into the exploration part of the series.
You say that, Samus is, turning over rocks and,
She's
exploring
just crawling
things
around,
all right, Ridley, where are you?
Flipping rocks over. Ridley, are you under there?
I'm imagining.
I gotta find Ridley.
Imagining Samus in a trench coat with a derby hat and a pipe. She's Detective Samus. I'll find that Ridley.
Yeah.
She's just
that first area was rainy enough for that.
She's just digging in the sand. Ridley, I'll get you.
I can smell you from here.
We need Detective Decker Samus Aran.
I was actually going to make a joke earlier about Samus followed Ridley to this planet. It's on-foot exploration required, or on-foot tracking. But then it's what if Samus landed here to track down Ridley, but Ridley was just kind of just kind of flew down to the planet to throw Samus off, and then flew right back out and like off to a different planet or something.
Yeah, he was just like hiding behind a cloud.
Samus is just walking around the planet for the next few years looking for Ridley.
I mean, the thing is like I think there's some it's clear that he's not, as him being wounded.
Yeah,
he's not going to be able to just like yeet himself through space.
I assume he it was pretty clear to Samus that like he's not at 100% and he like just kind of fell to the planet instead of being able to like choose where to fly off to. But it was just kind of a funny image that like, what if Ridley just came down here for a little bit and then Samus just wandering around looking for a Ridley that was no longer here.
I'm imagining
the hopes is that like if that was true, so like say he flew in the stratosphere to like a different ship and then left, her ship's scanners would be like, yeah, there was a ship that just left the fucking planet, and be like,
Oops.
But I interrupted you saying something, Trey.
Well, I forgot. We should talk about this room with bees in it.
Oh yeah. There are bees in it, and they have a hive that you can't destroy until you find the missiles.
Yep.
I always hated the wasps in this game because they infinitely respawned the hives, and it cost 1 missile to destroy the hives. But I was a stingy piece of shit. I didn't want to use my missile.
He was still in his no expendable items phase, unfortunately, when he played this.
For that matter, the only thing I remember from watching the demo of this game, like when it shows the little like gameplay, like the demo reel, if you wait on the menu for long enough, was seeing the player like shooting missiles at those like first little beetle enemies and just thinking, wow, what a waste of missiles.
Dan, those things are there for a reason. Like,
not only
to
that,
stock
like,
up on and never use.
Man, I can't imagine being that stingy with missiles in like a 2D Metroid game, because in the 2D Metroid games, those things are just like candy.
Let me tell you,
this ain't an action game. This is a collectathon.
Let me tell you, Metroid Prime 2 was a horrible experience for stingy Dan.
Oh no, you played that game as a child?
No.
Yes.
You poor thing.
I played that as a child, but I wasn't like that.
And let me also tell you, I played the demo of Metroid Prime Hunters, which you could pretty much only play the like survival mode or whatever, where you got a limited amount of power beam ammo, and that was enough to scare me away.
God, I played Metroid Prime 2.
That's
for the
not
first
even a
time
mecanic
when I was...
in Hunters outright. Sorry to interrupt
it's in
you,
some like survival mode or whatever.
Well,
it's not in the main game. It's like in a special mode that for some reason was the one that you played in the demo.
Well, but I'm saying that was cut, but in the full game. It's not in the full game.
It's not in the full, not even in the extra game mode.
Yeah, well, because what that became was there's little sections where you get locked in and have to fight a rival hunter.
And you get soft locked.
No. Well, it's not soft locked. It's just you go into a room when one of the hunter rivals has been stalking you, and then you have to fight them. And they do that relatively frequently. That's what the quote-unquote survival mode had become.
Oh.
Because it's not in the base game, I don't think.
We shouldn't glance over this first boss, the Hive Totem thing.
Yeah, a couple of important things to note here. First of all, this is the... It has become clear to me over the years of playing this game that this is the boss that trains you to use the radar in the upper left corner of the screen to track the position of your enemies.
Oh, yeah.
Because otherwise you're going to be getting hit by a lot of bees from behind. And in this arena that can be very punishing because the water surrounding this platform is hazardous to the touch. And being submerged in water in Metroid games, until you get the proper upgrades, slows you down massively. So if you fall down in the wrong area, you're probably not going to get out of that pool alive. And when you die in this game, it sends you all the way back to the last time you saved, which, if you'll recall, I haven't. Second thing with this boss, if you're playing the Wii version, I recommend that you turn off free aiming while locked on, because this boss becomes like the hardest boss in the game if when you actually have to point at these bees.
Well, yeah, because it's designed with, the fact that lock-on for the GameCube didn't have free aiming. Like, when you were locked on, you were aimed at them. And additionally, speaking of, the bosses being designed for control scheme and them not suiting, this also kind of underpins why I'm not a huge fan of the motion controls. The fact that you have to turn by, like, aiming at one side of the screen is really awkward to me. Like, I don't like those in MOBAs. I don't like doing that here either.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and that again is something that is much more comfortable to do if you're sitting a good distance away from your TV.
That's fair.
Because up close, it's just like, And I guess a third point, if you're playing the GameCube version of that boss and you want to go for 100% logbook completion, that boss is a scan, but on the GameCube version, his little scan target is underneath the water. Which, he's not the only enemy in this game that they put the scan node in a really mean location.
I was debating on whether or not to ask this now or later when it could actually come up, but did they fix the Ice Shriekback scan in the trilogy version?
I think they did.
Okay.
I can't confirm whether or not they did, but I feel like I've read that they did.
God, I hope
don't know.
they did.
Again, years of playing this game have just conditioned me to like always get the Ice Shriek bats.
Yeah. So what we're in reference to, for the people that don't know, whenever you get to one of the new areas, Pendrana Drifts, they have a variation of one of the enemies that Joe is going to encounter soon. Except for this is the one time they spawn, and these enemies are kamikaze enemies who will literally run at you and kill themselves. And that's
once they're gone in the GameCube version.
Because they respawn, once they've killed themselves and respawn, they respawn with the normal version of the Shriek Bat instead of the ice version. Because
or something like that. I can't remember if it's that or if they just don't respawn at all.
No, they do respawn. It's just normal Shriek Bats after that.
That is so weird.
Yep.
Yeah.
What the hell?
It's just a development oversight. They were supposed to, because the listing for what spawns initially when you first get there and what respawns afterwards changes. Because basically that's how they handle, the changing environments, is they just kind of have different like spawn lists for rooms.
Okay.
And they just forgot to make sure that the Ice Shriek Bats are what they labeled as respawning, and so it was just Shriek Bats.
So, the rewards you got from the Hive Totem are like your first like major upgrades when you get to Tallon IV. You get like the missile launcher, which has the same model as the missile upgrades. But then
a little weird, but
I can actually shed a little bit more light on that as well. If you guys vaguely remember the times that I've shown you speed runs of Metroid Zero Mission, the upgrades for missile launcher and the missile expansions are actually just the same upgrade code-wise.
Right.
So,
I mean, it's lucky for me because when I play Super Metroid, I always do the early power bomb or the early wave beam skip, and so I get my power bombs from lower Norfair, or sorry, not lower, regular Norfair instead of Brinstar, where I think you're supposed to get them.
Yep. And
then go back to Norfair for like other stuff. So in that respect, I'm grateful that they're the same thing because it means you can get them in any order you choose. But the Prime games aren't really built for that kind of play. And so you see a lot fewer examples of stuff like that, at least in my experience.
Yeah, but I mean, it is a conscious decision to have the missile launcher upgrade just be a missile expansion, simply for the fact of just consistency, design premise-wise from the 2D games into this one.
Yeah, I always figured the initial missile upgrade and the missile expansions were just the same thing, and that, like, you basically have the missile launcher, but you just have no capacity to carry missiles, so you effectively don't have access to it until you get your first missile expansion.
Yeah, that's a good way to rationalize
this, well, big air quotes around this, but this boss is a good showcase of the advantages of the Wii control scheme compared to the GameCube.
Oh, yeah.
Because the way aiming works in the GameCube is you either can lock onto enemies using the L button and strafe around a single enemy, or you can lock yourself down in place with the R button and aim freely, which, you know, both of them have their advantages and disadvantages, but here, since your movement and aiming are, like, you have full range of movement and aiming, like, at all times, you can just kind of, like, strafe away from them while not having to focus on a single target, and, you know...
I will definitely say it looks more fluid.
It's not at all a difficult part of the game, but it is kind of more fluid and easy to handle in the Wii version, just because of the new...
Yeah, fighting the Beatles was real awkward in the original, because for any enemy that there's just a lot of little guys, because of the way that the lock-on and everything was handled.
You could have killed him there with fast missiles, Joe, but you didn't.
God.
Because I suck, remember?
This is one of the most gruesome deaths in this game.
You showed you could do it.
Yeah, we just blew up his behind.
But before we get too far off of it, I will definitely say, like, with the Wii control scheme, like, it was definitely very intuitive for you to just be plonking missiles, not at a beetle, but just near them, to kill multiple of them.
Oh, yeah.
You can do that with the GameCube controls, but you kind of have to, like, because one of the things you didn't mention there is you can actually also free aim, but then also lock, like, your inclination that you've aimed at with the free aim.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, isn't that like a pressure sensitive thing?
Kind of. Yes, because they're showing off the analog controls, analog triggers for the GameCube. But it's still certainly more awkward than just, oh, I'm pointing at the ground to get them in the splash radius. So, props to the new controls for that.
Yeah. Well, rest assured there will be more new controls in the next episode. So if that's a selling point for you, then be sure to join us for part 3 of Metroid Prime. See you then, hopefully.
Bye, everybody.